संसार दावनल लीढलोक त्रणाय कारुण्य घना घनत्वं
संसार दावनल लीढलोक त्रणाय कारुण्य घना घनत्वं.
I first saw Srila Prabhupada when he arrived in Detroit in 1971 to visit our temple. And it was a big, big reception for Srila Prabhupada at the airport. Many, many devotees were there. They'd come from everywhere. They'd come from Chicago, New York, St. Louis. Even some devotees came as far away as the West Coast. And Prabhupada had been away for some time, and many of us had never seen Srila Prabhupada. So when he arrived at the airport, it was a tumultuous kirtan. Satsvarup Maharaj describes it quite nicely in his Prabhupada Lilamrita. What I remember is that Prabhupada got off the plane and he was coming through the airport way there, and we were having big, big kirtan. As soon as Prabhupada turned the corner, I was looking through my camera, because in those days there weren't many photos of Srila Prabhupada. Actually, the only photos I'd ever seen were a few black and white photos. So in those days, a photograph of Srila Prabhupada was something very rare and something very special. If a devotee had a photo, he would keep that and treasure it. And often during our japa sessions, if a devotee had a photo of Srila Prabhupada, we'd all sit around the photo and chant like this. So I was very eager to get a photo of Prabhupada, of my own. So Prabhupada came and he turned the corner, and I was looking through my camera. And I saw Prabhupada, and I thought, Prabhupada looks just like he does in the photographs, was my thought. But meanwhile, all around me, there was this huge kirtan, and devotees, especially devotees who had had Srila Prabhupada's association before, everyone broke out crying. And they fell to the ground, and there was so much sobbing and weeping, and I looked around. I remember my godbrother Balalasva Prabhu, he was next to me. And he was, when I first joined, he was a hero for me because he was a Sankirtan leader, he was a good kirtan man, he was a very good preacher and a leader. And I had this image of a very tough devotee, but he was on the ground and he was just crying, Prabhupada, Prabhupada. I looked around and I thought, why am I not crying? I must have so many material desires in my heart that I can't cry when I first see my spiritual master. So I just put my camera in my bag and fell on the ground. Namo Vishnu Padaya. And I remember Prabhupada came in to where the group of devotees were, and he embraced Kirtananda Maharaj, and he patted Bhagavan Das on the head. It was very, very sweet. And he sat down, or we took him, I can't remember exactly, we took him to not far away, there was a chair we'd set up for Srila Prabhupada. And he started giving a lecture, but I was so mesmerized just by seeing him after meditating on him for so many months. I'd only been a devotee for a few months, seeing him like that in front of me, so amazing. And but I remember one thing from his lecture. And through the years, I've met godbrothers, Bhakti Bringa Govinda Maharaj, Pragosh Prabhu, other godbrothers, who I didn't actually know at that time. And we would reminisce about that first time Prabhupada came and we saw him. And we all remember the same sentence that Prabhupada said in that lecture. He said, please believe me when I tell you, you are not this body. And that just entered into my heart. And, it convinced me, I'm not the body, I'm a spirit soul. I'd been reading it so often in Prabhupada's books and heard it in the lectures, but when Prabhupada looked at us, he leaned over a little bit and he said, please believe me when I tell you, you are not this body. So powerful. As Prabhupada said, the chanting of Hare Krishna is always beneficial, but it's especially potent when it's heard from the lips of a pure devotee. Prabhupada came to the temple, and I remember the first morning Prabhupada came down to give class. And Bhagavan's wife, Krishna Bhamini, she had her first child, Vaishnava Das. And she was standing near Prabhupada's Vyasasan, so Prabhupada came down the stairs of the Detroit temple, and we were having a kirtan, and then Prabhupada walked in, and I was standing right near Krishna Bhamini. And her son, Vaishnava, had kartals, little kartals. He must have been, I don't know what, he must, under two, one and a half or something. Probably one. But he had these kartals, and he was playing the kartals, like I'm not exaggerating. He was playing like so sweetly and in time to the kirtan. So Prabhupada walked by and he saw this. And he stopped and that's very nice. And he sat down on the Vyasasan, and instead of picking up the kartals himself and chanting Jaya Radha Madhava, he just started speaking about this boy. You see how this boy, he is playing the kartals so nicely. This could only be because he was devotee in his last life. I remember Krishna Bhamani, she just big smile on her face, and all the, the mother, their child devotee, so she was so happy like that. And then Prabhupada gave a lecture about how he was quoting Bhagavad Gita, how the unsuccessful yogi, he takes birth again either on higher planets, or he takes birth into a family of wealthy merchants, or he said best is to take birth in the family of brahmanas, devotee. He said, so these children are very, very special. You must take very good care of them. So that remained in my mind, that impression. A little later on the day, I was grihastra at that time, and my son was 1 or something, 1.5, just learning to speak. Some words were coming. And I had him on my shoulders. I was chanting my japa around the castle. In New Mayapur, we had a chateau, and Prabhupada's quarters were upstairs. So Prabhupada came to look out his window. I was taking my son around and then my son, Gaura Shakti, he saw Prabhupada up in the window there, and he went, Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Prabhupada. I thought he was going to fall off my shoulder. He was, Prabhupada, 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 Prabhupada. And okay, hold on. And Prabhupada waved to him. You could see Prabhupada waving. And that night, when Prabhupada gave darshan up in his quarters, he brought up the incident. He said there was one young boy. He said he was going around with his father around the castle, and he saw me. He started chanting Prabhupada, Prabhupada. So he said, this is Krishna consciousness. These children, we don't know who these children are. Maybe there is some connection from some previous birth. I thought, oh, my son. He said, these children, he said, they're so enthusiastic when they see me. He said, maybe there's some relationship from previous birth. Hare Krishna. Prabhupada stayed, I can't remember how many days, but I really wanted to be initiated. I'd been a devotee about 8 months. But Bhagavan had this policy. He said that none of the devotees he'd ever recommended for initiation had ever left. And he was very strict that you had to wait 1 year. And this was unusual in those days because devotees were getting initiated after 6 months, 4 months, 1 month. Sometimes people would walk off the street, and devotees in the naivety that you have to get initiated by a pure devotee. And then they'd sit down and, some states, many left. But I really wanted to be initiated, but I didn't get the authorization to get initiated. So I thought, but I want Prabhupada to know that I'm his disciple and I'm aspiring from him. So just as Prabhupada was leaving the Detroit temple, he was going out to the car. I ran upstairs to my room, and I thought, I'll give Prabhupada a donation. I'd heard something about a Bhaktivedanta book fund, BBT, Bhaktivedanta Book Trust. In those days it was called a book fund, I think. Hadn't been named, incorporated yet. So I ran upstairs, and when I joined the temple, I'd given all the money I had, which was about $2,000 or $3,000. I'd given that to the temple. But the temple president allowed me to keep $10. So I went and I got the envelope, and I took out the $10 that I was saving for emergency. And for me, it was a lot. It was some kind of security if I couldn't get something in the temple. So I put in an envelope, and I wrote a short letter, because Prabhupada was walking out to his car. Dear Srila Prabhupada, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to you. Thank you so much for coming to Detroit. It was a very short stay, but I learned so much during your visit, and I became very attached to you, and I'm very sorry to see you go. I'm going to feel so much your separation when you go. And then I put an envelope and I sealed it, and I ran downstairs, and Prabhupada was outside. He was just getting into his car. And I said, "Srila Prabhupada!" And I yelled it very loud. I was at the door, and he was maybe 30 yards, 40 yards away. All the devotees stopped, and everyone looked around, and Prabhupada, he looked. I said, I have a letter for you. So I ran, I paid my obeisances, and I gave the letter, and Prabhupada folded it, and he said, Hare Krishna. And just those short encounters with Srila Prabhupada had such an impression in our hearts. Lavamatra sadhu sangha sarvasiddhi vaya. So he put in his, I saw him put in his kurta pocket. It was sticking out. I think, is he going to lose it? Will he read it? Will he read it? Will Prabhupada read my letter? So then the car drove off, and that was, I pretty much forgot. I didn't forget, but I just thought, well, Prabhupada's so busy, he probably won't reply. 2 weeks later, a letter comes in the mail. And in those days, whenever a letter would come from Srila Prabhupada, it was a very special event. The temple president would get the letter, and he wouldn't say who it was addressed to. And we'd all assemble in, there was like kind of a living room in that temple, a reception room we used it as. The conch would blow, woo, letter from Srila Prabhupada, a letter's come from Srila Prabhupada. Whatever we were doing, working in the kitchen, cleaning the temple room, preparing the books for Sankirtan, or whatever we were doing, everyone would just drop whatever they do, and they'd run to this reception room, where we'd all sit down in great expectation to hear just a few drops of nectar from Srila Prabhupada. And we didn't think that, this letter's for this particular Prabhu, so we figured whatever Srila Prabhupada said was for the benefit of all of us, so every devotee would hang on every word that came from that letter. So Bhagavan, he said, "We've received a letter today from Srila Prabhupada. And this letter is addressed to," and he said, "Bhakta Brian." And I went, "That's me." Prabhupada wrote it. I replied to my letter. So he said, "So, Bhakta Brian, you can come forward and read the letter." So I stood up and I came forward, and his hands were shaking. And I can't remember exactly because the letter was later lost, but my dear Bhakta Brian, please accept my blessings. I want to thank you very much for your donation of $10 towards my book fund. I have information from the authorities in your temple that you are doing very nicely in Krishna consciousness. So my request to you is that you always follow in the footsteps of advanced devotees. And in due course of time, I will be very, very happy to accept you as my duly initiated disciple. And I was just so elated, so happy that Prabhupada had agreed to initiate me, that in due course of time, so that gave me a lot of strength, spiritual strength. Some months later, I can't remember exactly, but some months later, Srila Prabhupada wrote to Bhagavan Das that he wanted him to go to Europe to help with the center in Paris. It was a new temple in Paris. Hari Vilas was there, Lochananda, Umapati Prabhu, who's now Umapati Swami. There were a few devotees, but Prabhupada felt he wanted a GBC man to go there and organize the preaching and get things going, bring it up a little bit. So one day Bhagavan was mentioning that he's going to soon be leaving, and he's going to be going to France, and he was trying to think who could come with him and assist him. So I heard that, I raised my hand, I said, I went to Europe one time and I traveled around. He said, do you know how to travel? I said, of course, I've been to France and I've been to Germany and Spain, and you just take me and I'll organize everything for the travel. He said, all right, you can come. We were already quite close. So he said, but on one condition, that you can get us on the same flight as Srila Prabhupada. Because Prabhupada was flying in about a week's time to London. So I said, if we're going to go, we'll try to go on the same flight. So if you can get on the same flight as Srila, you can come with me. I mean, he was probably already agreeing, but I said, okay. So I got on the telephone to New York. And I found out from the devotees what flight Srila Prabhupada was on. So I called the airlines and I talked to the ticket agent there. And I said, do you have a A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, a Mr. Swami on this? Yes, we do. And we have, his servant was also mentioned. I said, I'd like to reserve 2 seats on that flight. She said, I'm sorry, the flight's completely booked. My heart just dropped. I said, gosh, isn't there anything you can do? I said, this is my spiritual master. She said, you're what? I said, he's my spiritual master. She said, what's a spiritual master? I said, he's my guru. She didn't know anything. He's like my teacher. He's like my spiritual teacher. I said, like in Christianity, you know, you have Jesus Christ and he's your life and soul and his teacher. I said, oh, okay, just 1 minute. I'll go talk to my supervisor. So 2 minutes later, she came back. She said, sir, we've made an arrangement so you can be with your guru on the flight. We've got 2 seats for you. So I, gave my name and Bhagavan's name. And a week later, it was some days later, we drove to New York City. And at that time, the temple was on Henry Street. And all I can remember about Henry Street is that Prabhupada was giving initiations. We have these big Bharadraj and different, all these people I'd heard about and wanted to meet, these devotees. They were leading kirtans, and Vishnu Jan Maharaj was there, and having Harinams out on the streets every day of New York, and Prabhupada was lecturing. I remember, the impression in my mind is Prabhupada's lectures, and Bhavananda had made a Vyasasan for Srila Prabhupada, very kind of pop art. It was all different colors and everything. I remember Prabhupada, I was impressed, this is an amazing Vyasasan. But Prabhupada would sit on it, and it would start slipping like this. I always wanted to come up and hold the cushion. I could see Prabhupada was always struggling on the seat there. And then it came time to go to the airport for our flight. There was myself, and Bhagavan, Srila Prabhupada, and Pradyumna. And we got in a car and we drove off a little bit early, and most of the devotees got stuck in the traffic. Because in those days, everybody, the whole temple would come to go to the airport and see Prabhupada off. And so my car got there first. Somehow we avoided the traffic jam, and just behind us, Srila Prabhupada arrived. It was Prabhupada and Pradyumna and the driver, really. And then there was myself and Bhagavan and our driver. So we got in and we started going from out, checking our bags in, and then we went to passport control. And by that time, all the devotees had arrived. It was just so chaotic. There were hundreds and hundreds of devotees. Everybody wanted to see Prabhupada for the last time and, offer their obeisances, maybe ask a few questions. But it was, by the time we actually got to check in, it was a little late. So it was chaotic. And the man who was taking the passports, and next to that, they were checking our hand luggage. I was right next to Prabhupada. And that officer, he said, I want to see inside that white bag. Prabhupada used to carry this white bag, which would keep all his important papers and his glasses and his kartals and certain documents and medicines and things. I always wanted to see inside that white bag, because always carrying it, a little white, about this big. Famous bag, actually. So he said to Prabhupada, I opened that bag. And Prabhupada was having a hard time with the locks. It was kind of old by that time, an Indian make. Hard to open, so he couldn't open, and the man became very rough. He said, open that bag, I said. So I leaned over the counter, and I said, went right up to his face, I said, if you speak like that again to my spiritual master, I'm going to break your face. So, the man stepped back, he said, I thought you people were nonviolent. I said, but in a case like this, you're speaking to a pure devotee. You should know the proper etiquette. So he said, okay, young man, you open the bag. I said, okay. And I always wanted to see in that bag, So I turned it around and just opened, just like that. And I opened it up, and then I just became mesmerized. So, looking in the bag, there's a confidential insight into Prabhupada's possessions. I was looking at the glasses, and this was there, and the pen was there. And the man said, excuse me, I want to see in the bag. So I turned it around. He looked, he said, okay, thank you. So we went on, and then Pradyumna and Bhagavan, they had to go through the same formalities. So the man said, all right, go quickly now, I'll take care of the others. So we were the first two, me and Srila Prabhupada, to walk to the plane along the hallway there. And there were no other passengers, there was nobody, just the two of us in the hallway. It was the first time I'd ever been alone with Prabhupada. So Prabhupada turned to me and he said, just see, he said, in this material world, these people have no good qualities. And I kind of listened. He said, because they are associating with the modes of nature, they have no good qualities. He said, do you understand, Indradyumna? So like, Prabhupada speaking to me. Yes. I didn't really understand. Yes. And then we walked a little further and he said again, he stopped and he said, you just see, hovering on the mental platform, no Krishna consciousness, all the bad qualities. Do you understand, Indradyumna? Yes. And then just before we got to the plane, Prabhupada stopped again, he said, just see, because they are associating with these modes of nature, they're going downwards, downwards, downwards. But if we can revive their Krishna consciousness, they'll develop all good qualities. Do you understand? And I went, yeah, now I understand. There was some special potency in hearing the instruction or hearing the knowledge 3 times. And it just entered into my heart. I said, oh, yeah, I understand that they have bad qualities because they're associated with the material world, but if we revive their Krishna consciousness, then all their good qualities will come out. And I just was, oh, okay, I understand. It was like a mystical experience. So we went into the plane, and we sat down. There was no other passengers. I was just sitting next to Srila Prabhupada. And after, I was nervous. I didn't know what to do. I said, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare. And I was chanting like that. Well, Prabhupada will see I'm chanting good rounds. Hare Ram, Hare Ram. Prabhupada was just looking out the window. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. And then a few passengers started to arrive, and Prabhupada said to me, so, prasad? And, what? There's some prasadam? And you know, that was Padumna's, he was the secretary acting as a servant at the same time. But somebody had said, here's some oranges for Prabhupada, as we were going through that crowd of doing, here's some oranges for Prabhupada, tell him it's from such and such, and okay. The oranges, and there was a little plastic knife in there, and some paper plates. So I had that, I said, yes. So, prasad, let's take prasad. I pulled the table down, and I took the knife out, and I cut the oranges like this. Gave them to Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada started sucking on the oranges. Its jaws making these noises, and I think, and then he finished. There was 3 oranges, everything. He sucked the juice out and ate, and he put it back, and then he said, Hare Krishna. So then he said to me, so, Indradyumna, you're going to take prasad? And the neophyte, devotee, that I am, I said to Srila Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada, there's no more prasadam. So Prabhupada looked at me and he said, there's Maha Prasad. So I said, oh. So I took the plate, and I was just so happy that my spiritual master had ordered me to take his remnants, and I was so much in bliss. I just took the orange and just put it in my mouth, the peel and everything. I started chewing it. And of course, when you eat an orange peel, it's very sour, and my lips started burning, and my mouth, this is Maha. I took 2, 3, and then tears were coming to my eyes, little feeling. Mahaprasad. And then I looked over at Prabhupada, he was like this. I sucked the rest of them. So then the plane took off, and some time passed, and then they asked everyone to close the windows, and they're going to show a movie. So this is Maya. I'm going to show Prabhupada that I watch this movie. So it was dark, and the movie started, and I had a Bhagavad Gita, picked up my Bhagavad Gita. And I started kind of, Dehino smin yata dehe kovanam, look at Prabhupada, kovanam, going through different verses, sarva dharmam paritaja, I'm not watching this movie. And then I heard Prabhupada chuckle. He started to chuckle, and he started to laugh, like really laugh. And I looked over, and Prabhupada's watching the movie. Sarvadharma, Prabhupada's watching the movie. And I closed the book and all right, put the book down. I looked up, it was Charlie Chaplin, movie about Charlie Chaplin. I mean, one of his humorous movies. And Prabhupada really liked the movie. He was laughing, and I was also laughing. It was very funny. And Pradyumna was also laughing, and and the movie was over. And then, lights came back on, and I started thinking, but I thought we weren't supposed to watch movies. What's going on here? I said, Prabhupada must have some explanation why we watched this movie. So I leaned over and I said, Pradyumna was on the other side of Prabhupada. I said, Pradyumna, can I speak to you? He said, we're busy now. I said, no, I need to speak to you. I have a really important question. I said, I'll meet you back by the bathroom. Come on. So I got up and I went back, and then he came past Prabhupada, and he got back to the bathroom, and I said, in the aisle, I said, Pradyumna, we weren't supposed to watch movies, so what am I supposed to think? He said, well, I don't know. I said, well, maybe we should ask Srila Prabhupada. So he said, okay. I said, you go ask Srila Prabhupada. And I said, no, you go ask Srila Prabhupada. He said, no, you go ask Srila Prabhupada. And we're going back and forth like this. Who's going to ask Srila Prabhupada? So finally, he agreed to go and ask Srila Prabhupada. So he went down the aisle and he sat down next to Prabhupada, and they were speaking, and I could see, and then eventually Pradyumna's big smile came on his face, and he was nodding. So I was waiting for the answer back there. So then he came, he walked down the aisle with a big smile on his face. I said, what did Srila Prabhupada say? He said, yes, generally we don't watch movies, he said, but Charlie Chaplin's humor is very original, and Krishna is the origin of all original things. Was Prabhupada's answer. And of course we know when Prabhupada was a young boy, he liked the humor of Charlie Chaplin, innocent humor of Charlie Chaplin. We arrived in London, and as we were landing in London, I was so excited because I'd heard how Malati and Shyamasundar and Mukunda and Janaki and Guru Das and the devotees were all there, and they were doing a lot of service they're building up a new center. And we'd heard about the Beatles, how the Beatles had taken an interest in Krishna consciousness, and I was just expecting a big reception for Srila Prabhupada. It would be very special, as they always were, Prabhupada's reception. But this would be extra special, because Prabhupada maybe was going to meet the Beatles or something. So we landed, and then we were collecting our bags, and Prabhupada was just chanting his japa, and then one of Prabhupada's bags didn't arrive, a very important bag, the bag with all of his books, the commentaries by the acharyas that he was using for his writing. Didn't come. We waited and waited, and everybody left, and we could hear the kirtan outside, in the reception hall. We could hear a big kirtan going on, and then, there was no bag. And Shyamasundar was really come to the airport to meet us. He was really upset, and he said, he said, someone's going to have to stay and wait for this bag. So when he said it, I kind of tried to hide, behind a pillar. He said, so Prabhupada, Indradyumna can stay, and he'll bring the bag to the temple there. Prabhupada said, yes, it's very important. Oh no, I'm going to miss the reception. So everybody left, and I saw Prabhupada walk out the door, and I could see the kirtan. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. A big fire. Oh no, I got to wait for this bag. Why did they lose the bag? So I waited about an hour and a half. And finally, somehow they found the bag. And they brought it to me. I was waiting by the ticket counter. They brought it to me. And it was a big bag, huge, big suitcase. And it was just packed full of books. It was really heavy. I could hardly lift it myself. So I put it on a trolley, and I went outside, and I'd been in London before, but it was some years ago, and I didn't know really how to get around, and I said, I'll just take a taxi. So it was raining and cold, and I was miserable, and I missed the reception, and there were no devotees around. I got the taxi, and I put the bag in there, and got in. He said, where do you want to go? I said, 7 Bury Place. He looked back, he said, are you all right, boy? You okay, son? I said, no. He said, anything I can do to help you? No, I miss the reception of my spiritual master. You're what? I have a spiritual master. I'm a devotee in the Hare Krishna. Oh, the ones that sing down there on the Oxford Street. Yeah, well, sorry about that. Anyway, there's always a better day. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Got to the temple, it was even raining harder. And I got out and paid him, and big bag, walked up the stairs, knocked on the door, some devotee, big blissful face. Oh, Hare Krishna, who are you? I'm Indradyumna Das. I came on the flight with Srila Prabhupada. I had to wait behind for his bag. Oh, come on in. I came in, bag down, and I was thinking, well, God, at least I'll get some prasadam. It must have been a good feast. And then the devotees are all sitting around with these paper plates, you know, and all the paper plates are empty. It's the yellow turmeric stains and a few finger marks through the ghee on the plate. I'm going, Prabhu, is there any prasadam? Ah, Prabhu, you missed the prasadam. You should have come about, a couple hours earlier. Oh, and you missed the reception. The reception for Prabhupada was so ecstatic. Prabhupada spoke so nicely. We had big kirtan. I'm going, oh, please. There's no prasadam, not even a pakora? Nope. Oh, okay, well, can some of you guys help me carry this bag upstairs? Prabhupada's upstairs? Yeah, he has a room upstairs. Can you help me carry this bag upstairs? No, we're so full. Oh, I can't help. Can you help? No, I'm full. I can't. So I'll do it myself. I started to get angry at that bag. Later I understood that bag was the source of all good fortune for me. So Buri Place Temple was, the steps were very steep going up to every level. So I was boom, boom, taking that bag up. I don't remember what floor Prabhupada's room was on, maybe the 3rd floor or something. And I was exhausted by the time. Tired, hungry, hadn't showered. And then I saw on the door it said, His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami. Prabhupada's there. So I didn't even knock. I just opened the door. I didn't think, again, the etiquette, I was just so excited, I'm going to see Prabhupada again, but I'm tired and confused, a little confused. I opened the door, and I turned around, and I started dragging Prabhupada's suitcase in backwards. And I'm dragging, looking at Prabhupada's room, and all of a sudden, Nanda Kumar, who was serving Srila Prabhupada in London as a servant, he said, hey, watch out! You're going to bump into Srila Prabhupada. And I dropped the bag, and I turned around, and I was this far away from Prabhupada. He was just standing there, Hare Krishna. And I said, oh, Srila Prabhupada. And I fell down on the ground. And I started offering my obeisances. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Vastaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhaktivedanta. And all of a sudden, on my back, there was a slap on my back. And I thought, well, Prabhupada slapped me on the back. Well, I couldn't figure out if it was like out of love or anger. I didn't know, because either would be a blessing. And I can still, that right there on the back right there, Prabhupada's blessing. And I just continued, Namaste, Saraswati, and then Prabhupada said something. But I couldn't hear. He said it kind of softly. And then after a few moments, I was right near Prabhupada's feet. His feet walked away and he went to another part of the chamber, the room there. So I waited and I got up. Prabhupada wasn't in the room anymore. And Nanda Kumar was there, and I looked over at him, and his mouth was open, like. And I said, Prabhu, what happened? He said, Prabhupada slapped you on the back. I said, yeah, I know. It hit me hard. Yeah, I know. I said, and what did he say? And he smiled, he said, oh, it was so nice, he said. Prabhupada told you, so much endeavor in this material world, but when I take you back home, back to Godhead, everything will be easy and sublime. Srila Prabhupada ki. So, all of us, we receive so many instructions from Srila Prabhupada in the books, but if a disciple is fortunate enough to get a personal instruction or a personal blessing from the spiritual master, they treasure that and they keep it in their heart forever. And quite often, as the years went on and there were sometimes difficulties in Krishna consciousness, as the movement spread, there was so much opposition, and just the daily service of going out on Sankirtan, it was cold, it was hot, I was tired, or there were days like that. Then I just remember those words: so much endeavor in this material world, but when I take you back home, back to Godhead, everything will be easy and sublime. So I just, when those days come, I just think like that. Those are Prabhupada's words. Let us struggle to serve Srila Prabhupada, push on the Sankirtan movement in this world, because in the end, Prabhupada's going to take us all back home, back to Godhead. And when we go back to the spiritual world, everything's going to be easy and sublime. After we arrived in London, we spent a couple of days there. We went to Srila Prabhupada's room, myself and Bhagavan. And Prabhupada had actually called for us. He called for us because he wanted to give us some encouragement, because we were going from there to Paris. So someone said, Prabhupada wants to see you. So we came and knocked on the door, and Nanda Kumar answered the door, and he invited us in. And Prabhupada was sitting behind a low desk there, paid obeisances, and Prabhupada started preaching about the importance of the Sankirtan movement, and how he was very appreciative that we were going there, and we were going to, help the Sankirtan movement, and Krishna will give us all facility, and then he looked over, he's looking at me, and he said, so, my instruction is, preach boldly and have faith in the holy names. And that, again, it was like, into my heart, And that's another instruction which I've kept and I meditate on constantly. Preach boldly and have faith in the holy names. And then Prabhupada said, so I'll give you something to encourage you. And he reached over in his drawer and he pulled out some of his clothes. And he handed something to Bhagavan Das, I can't remember what it was, and he reached him and he handed me one of his dhotis. I took that dhoti and I went, whoa, I took it to my heart, and I said, wow, now I have something I can treasure. I have the instruction from Srila Prabhupada to preach boldly and have faith in the holy names, and I have his dhoti. I have his own dhoti. And although I was a grihastra, I used to always wear that dhoti like a chadar. And sometimes sannyasis would come to Europe, I won't mention who, but one of the sannyasis said to me, you're a householder. You can't wear saffron. I said, Maharaj, yes I can. This is Prabhupada's dhoti, and no one's going to make me take this dhoti. He goes, oh, it's Prabhupada's dhoti. Huh? I said, yes. I wore that thing till it just wore out. That dhoti. So we, with Prabhupada's blessings, we went to Paris. And I remember that when we walked in the temple at Fontenay-aux-Roses, because in America things were building up, we had big temples and the deities and the things were organized, and we got to Paris and a little house outside of Paris, and we walked into the temple room, and as we walked into the temple, the altar collapsed. It was an altar of cardboard boxes and a couple of sticks, and they had a picture of Panchatattva, and the devotee was having a big kirtan. We walked in and we went, oh my gosh, where did Prabhupada send us? Look at this place. It's an old building, it's cold, there's no heat, the altar, but the kirtan was ecstatic. Lochananda was leading the kirtan. It was a really nice kirtan. And about a couple of weeks later, Prabhupada came over to Paris, and we received him there, and small little temple. And all I can remember about that visit, we had a program in the American Center downtown. I remember all the German devotees came. Hansa Duda brought all the German devotees from Germany, and we had a program there. And I remember there's some problems outside. We didn't want to tell Prabhupada. Some ruffians came and tried to make some. And but I remember taking a morning walk with Srila Prabhupada, and the French had these nice houses and little gardens like this, and I was kind of impressed by how nice the gardens were and houses were. Prabhupada, he wasn't impressed. He looked at me and said, he's French, he said, they're so expert at sense gratification. Prabhupada visited us in France several times. On one visit, 1973, 74, he came to install Radha Parish Ishwara. And during the installation ceremony, it's a very simple installation ceremony, we had Radha and Krishna in two big buckets. We did the installation ceremony like that, and I was standing next to the Vyasasan, and as they were bathing Srimati Radharani, she had a little, the color of the marble was kind of a deep, like a rose color here on her face, right in her cheek. And Prabhupada thought that it was just some, something from the Abhishek, maybe the ghee mixed with some color or turmeric or something. And I remember I was looking at the installation, watching the installation, and then Prabhupada got up off his Vyasasan, and he was walking with so much concern and so much care and love towards the deity of Radharani. And when he got up very close to her, and he folded his hands, and then he went like this on her face. He thought it was something could be removed, but it was the color of the marble. He went like this, so much. And I was watching that, I was thinking, Prabhupada, he doesn't see the deity as marble. He's actually seeing that Radharani's there. And he's treating her with so much love and devotion. I remember how carefully he was doing like that. And for me, just that one incident convinced me so much about deity worship. Like the pujaris pray before they do the puja. My dear Lord, you are not a statue. You are directly the son of Maharaj Nanda. And although I didn't know that quote at that time, Prabhupada's his intimate dealings with the deity convinced me the deity is not stone, it's actually Krishna, actually Radha. Like he said when he installed the little small Radha and Krishna in Los Angeles, he said, if you see these deities as brass, they'll remain brass to you forever. But if you follow the rules and regulations of Scripture and you worship them with love and devotion, he said, one day these deities will speak to you. So like this, Prabhupada did so many great things around the world, so monumental achievements. But because he was a pure devotee, the little things he did were also wonderful. Like Krishna is greater than the greatest and smaller than the smallest. So his pure devotee, by the Lord's grace, is able to do huge things. But even the small things he does, because they're imbued with pure devotion to the Lord, they're also very significant and very endearing and captivating. So, like when Prabhupada would play kartal, the way he would move his fingers and the way he would chant, this is just always captivating for me. He was doing them in pure devotion for Radha and Krishna. The next year, Srila Prabhupada came back, and we were very enthusiastic to receive him because we've been worshiping Radha and Krishna for 1 year now, so we had new outfits and the temple was repainted. We actually had a marathon going on. And part of our marathon, to collect funds for renovating everything for Prabhupada's arrival, we would go into the metros, the underground, and we would distribute, we had a little pamphlet on chanting Hare Krishna, something like that. And it was a competition. Bhagavan said a competition. The first 2 persons who win the marathon, they'll get to bathe Prabhupada's feet. So myself and we'd go in when it was dark. We'd go in the early morning, just get up and chant our rounds. We'd go into the metro. We'd come out at night, 11 o'clock at night. For 1 month, I didn't see the light of the sun. For 1 month, we'd sleep, on the chairs in the metro if we were tired. We'd eat down there, and we'd just going. And I was sleeping maybe 3 or 4 hours a night for 1 month. I wanted so much to wash Prabhupada's feet, because I'd heard the dust of the lotus feet, the water that washes those feet, the remnants of his prasadam are very conducive for advancing in Krishna consciousness. I was determined, beg, borrow, steal, I'm going to get that mercy. So me and Vagarva, my godbrother, we were like a team. We were going on, and we won that marathon. So we went out a few extra days, and we distributed many pamphlets, small books. We went out and we got extra big bowl for silver for washing Prabhupada's feet, extra big pitcher, because we had a plan. So Prabhupada came that year, and it was a big reception at Orly Airport, and we brought Prabhupada to the temple, and myself and Bhagarbo, we'd had our big silver bowl and our pitcher filled with warm water and rose water and petals. And then Prabhupada came in. He saw the deities, but he sat down to receive the Guru Puja. And I put the bowl there. Bhagarba started pouring the water, and I was Prabhupada's feet like this. I was thinking, wow, this is the perfection of my life, touching the feet of a pure devotee. We gathered all that water. It was big thing, liters, water, charnamrita. And then our plan. So the kirtan was raging. So I said, okay, 1, 2, 3, let's go. So we took that bowl and I was carrying it, we ran upstairs, and I had the key to the president's office in my pocket. And some of the brahmacharis, they figured out what we were doing. So there was like this group of brahmacharis following us up the, because usually you take that water and you throw it on everybody's head like this, and give some, no, we wanted every drop of that. So we ran upstairs to the first floor and ran into the office. I turned and slammed the door just in time and locked that door. And boom, 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 you could hear the brahmacharis piling into the door, and they were banging, "We want the nectar, we want the nectar." So we sat down. We each had a cup, brand new cup in our pocket. We took our cups out and we sat down. We were at the door behind us. You could, brahmacharis were at the door like this, I said to Bhugarba, "Do you feel something?" He said, no. Yeah, me either, nothing to worry about. I said, let me do the honors. So I took that cup and I put it in the Charnamrita. And then I gave it to Bhugarba and I put my cup in like that. And then we cheers. We began drinking very slowly. I savored every drop. And I was just remembering that, the water that washes the lotus feet of a pure devotee, the water of the spiritual masters, there's so much mercy there. And I was drinking we took our time. And the kirtan was still going downstairs, and we just kept drinking and drinking. And I don't know how two young men could drink that much water, that much Charnamrita. It was a lot. We just kept drinking. And there was a couple drops left at the end, so I said, separately, I took that last drop, he took that drop there, and we sat back. Oh. I think that's probably the reason I'm still in the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. We get that mercy. So then I took the key and I opened the door. About 20 brahmacharis just piling. They were actually tumbling in because they didn't expect the door to open. They pummeled. They all got up. "Where's the mercy? Where's the Charnamrita?" I'm still sitting there. I said to Bhugarba, I said, "The mercy?" He said, "What are they talking about?" I said, I don't know. We still have our cups in our hands against the door. And the boys said, "The Charnamrita, you took all the Charnamrita." "Oh, Charnamrita, sorry boys. Hare Krishna. Beg, borrow, steal. You got to get the mercy." Well, then Bhagavan came and said, "What are you all doing up here?" Nothing. We're just coming back down." I said, "I'll be down there in a minute. I have to use the toilet." But we came down and the lecture there. And then Prabhupada, he was sitting there, and then after the kirtan, so he took his kartals. And he started chanting, "Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhan." Hearing Prabhupada sing about the spiritual world, about Radha and Krishna, Giri Govardhan, Jamuna, everything around us just stopped. We were just mesmerized by this, entering into the spiritual world through Prabhupada's transcendental sound vibration. Prabhupada was looking at Radha Parasishwara. And then suddenly, Prabhupada started shaking. "Oh, Kunja Bihar," like this. And I thought, oh no, Prabhupada's sick. Something's happening. "Kunja Bihar." And he stopped. And I was sitting just this far away from Prabhupada, right in front of the Vyasa-san. And I noticed Prabhupada's eyes just welled up with tears. They all of a sudden overflowed with tears, and they were flowing like this. Like we hear, "Oh Govinda, feeling your separation, I'm considering a moment to be like 12 years." Tears are flowing from my eyes like torrents of rain. So it wasn't just some little tear. They were flowing like this. And I was sitting there looking at Srila Prabhupada, and I was thinking, wow, here I am in the material world, and Prabhupada's in the spiritual world. He's in Vrindavan. And by his causeless mercy, I'm getting a glimpse of what it's like to be in Vrindavan, to have love for Radha and Krishna. And that's another impression which is, forever etched within my heart, like they say, lines etched in stone. Just remembering that, it convinced me so much. If there's anything that convinced me about Krishna consciousness, it was just seeing the symptoms of love manifested. I couldn't understand it. It's still far beyond me, but I'm convinced just from that one incident of Prabhupada shedding tears of love while And then he stopped. He opened his eyes, he said, "Chant Hare Krishna." So we started chanting again, and then Prabhupada gave his very short lecture, and then he went upstairs. We were in Geneva, and Prabhupada came, and after the reception, we came upstairs, and Guru Garanga had purchased 2 bars of Swiss chocolate, light and dark. So he gave them to me, and he said, when Prabhupada comes up, ask Srila Prabhupada if he'd like some chocolate, because Swiss chocolate's the best chocolate. So I said, okay. And then Prabhupada came in his room, and we came and paid our obeisances, and Prabhupada was saying, kind of getting funny about the room, where's what in this. And I said, oh, Srila Prabhupada, we have some chocolate for you. He said, oh. I said, Guru Garanga, he says that the Swiss chocolate's the best chocolate. I said, oh, so I'll try some. So I opened up the light one, and I broke a little piece, and I get ready. Prabhupada took it, he tasted it, he said, oh, very good. And he said, and what? He pointed to the other, I said, and that? I said, this is a different, because this is dark chocolate, but it's maybe a little bitter. He said, no, we try. Took a, gave it to Prabhupada, he said, all right, Hare Krishna. Another time Prabhupada came to Paris, my traveling Sankirtan party was in the island of Corsica, in the Mediterranean, a French island. We were distributing books there. And Prabhupada came quite suddenly. I think he was ill in England, and Bhagavan went over to beg Prabhupada to come, and he spoke so nicely about the activities that were going on in France. Many books had been published and were being distributed, and the deity worship was going very nice. He didn't want to, pressure Prabhupada, but he just wanted to know he wanted Prabhupada to know how much the devotees were, how intensely they were serving, and how much they loved him. So then Bhagavan walked out of the room, and Prabhupada turned to one of his secretaries. He said, all right, we will go. He said, Bhagavan is the supreme controller. So that was kind of an unexpected visit. So we were in Corsica, and we received a phone call that Srila Prabhupada had just arrived in Paris, and we were to come up there immediately. And I was in the middle of giving a lecture in a yoga club, and someone came in and said, Prabhupada just arrived in Paris, you're supposed to come right now. I said, I'll finish my lecture. No, we want to go right now, we don't want to miss. I said, well, finish the lecture. Prabhupada would want us to finish the lecture. This is our duty. So I finished the lecture, 10 or 15 minutes, and I said to the audience, my spiritual master, a pure devotee of the Lord, has just arrived in Paris, the capital of your country. I said, if any of you want to come with us, you can come and meet a pure devotee. So can any of you come? At the back, I'd seen him earlier, a man in uniform. Of course, Corsica's an island, so the French Navy's there. And he raised his hand. He said, yes, me and my family will come. He said, this is the first time we've been to a yoga center, but what you've said is very, very interesting, and I'd like to meet the person who's explaining this to you, your guru. I said, sir, who are you? He said, I'm an admiral in the French Navy. You're an admiral in the French Navy? All right. He said, don't worry, I'll get off duty. I said, well, we'll leave in about a half an hour. He said, no problem. He went and made a few phone calls. He was in uniform. He just kind of got off work or something. His wife went back in their car, got a few belongings. I think they had 2 kids. Within a short time they were back, and we jumped in our Sankirtan van and off we went with the French admiral in tow behind us. We drove, I think 12, 14 hours to Paris. We got there, and Prabhupada was just about to give a darshan. And we were unshaved, unshowered, driving all night. We weren't going to miss, one moment of Prabhupada's association. So we came in the temple, and I told the devotees, I said, got a big catch here. Got an admiral. He has medals and everything. All right, come on up. So we came up, and Prabhupada just 1 or 2 words had just started, and the door opened, we walked in. I was so, I was just so happy I could, bring something to my spiritual master, etiquette is, you know, you bring your guru some dakshin, some flowers, some fruits or something, and here we were bringing Admiral in the French Navy. I was just like bursting with pride, in the sense of, you know, proud to be the disciple of my guru, and this is my alms, I've brought this person for you to preach to. And Prabhupada saw the Admiral, he just, beamed, you know. So I told the Admiral, I said, you sit down here right in front of Srila Prabhupada. And he was very respectful, the Admiral, very, very respectful. When he saw Srila Prabhupada, he said, oh. So he sat down, I asked his wife, you please sit, and I sat next to him, and I told Prabhupada, this is, we were doing a program, Srila Prabhupada, in the south of France, in Corsica, and we heard of your arrival, and I asked if anyone wanted to come, and this Admiral, I said, oh, very nice. So Prabhupada began speaking Bhagavad Gita, how Bhagavad Gita was spoken to Arjuna, who was a warrior. And Prabhupada said, even though we're a warrior, he described, you know, there's Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, Sudras, and a little bit about what each of them do, but how everyone's focused on offering their service to Krishna. So even though you're a warrior, he said, you can also be devotee of God. You can use your work to serve God. And Prabhupada was preaching like this. And the Admiral was drinking in every minute of it. Oh, yes. And then he started speaking Prabhupada, other things, reincarnation, karma, and these are all very new to the Admiral, but he was all ears. 45 minutes, Prabhupada preached just to him. And then in the end, the Admiral said, what do I call you? And I said, call him Srila Prabhupada. So he tried Srila Prabhupada. This is very interesting for me. He said, very, very interesting. He said, I don't know what's happened. I just came to a yoga club, you know, with my wife wanted to go, and now I'm sitting here in front of you, a very special person. He said, if I want to understand this philosophy, what should I read? So Prabhupada said, Bhagavad Gita. One of the servants went and got Bhagavad Gita in French. He said, this is our French Gita. He said, you have to read this. And the Admiral looked at it as a big book. He said, well, I may not have time to read the whole book. So if he looked at it, he said, there's different chapters. He said, of all the chapters in this book, which chapter should I read, concentrate on? And Prabhupada said, 9th chapter. You read the 9th chapter, and then you'll understand everything about Krishna. And the man, you know, he went like this. He took the Bhagavad Gita, received the Bhagavad Gita from Prabhupada, instruction, you know, which chapter to read, and he got the blessings of, then he left. Everything happened so quickly. We were so young in those days, we didn't, you know, I didn't get his address. Get his telephone number. We were just driving up to Paris to see Srila Prabhupada, and there we were, and then the Admiral was gone. I thought, boy, I wish I had gotten his contact, you know. Years later, in Paris, I was distributing books near the mairie, near the mayor's office. And I came that morning, I saw there was a big function happening there. There was all cordoned off by the police, and there were, you know, police cars, and the lights were going, and I thought, wow, this is great. I'll get in there. There must be a big event, a lot of important people there. I'll get in there somehow and distribute books to all the, you know, maybe I'll get a book to the mayor or something. And I got in, and the police threw me out. They just took me, get out of here. And then I looked over, and they were a group of Navy personnel who were obviously part of whatever function it was. And they were looking how I'd been thrown out, roughly by the police officer. I looked, and who did I see? Admiral. He was in his uniform. So he came over to the police. He said, this boy can come. Let him come over. So I went over, and I said, well, it's a good opportunity. I said, Admiral, it's good to see you, you know, and put a few books in the hands of the people around there, you know. I actually didn't sell any books, but I said, it's really good to see you again. He said, yeah. He said, not a day goes by I don't remember your spiritual teacher. Not a week goes by I don't read the 9th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. I said, thank you very much. And we shook hands. And then the police said, all right, now it's enough. Out. We have to go. You know. And I got under the rope and said, oh my God, again I didn't get his name and address. But I figured it was by Krishna's mercy this man was able to meet a pure devotee once, twice, and, you know, that will again give him the opportunity, some devotional service he did to meet Prabhupada again. On one morning walk, this will be my last story, in one morning walk, well, again, it was another time that Srila Prabhupada came to Paris. And we were making preparations for Prabhupada's arrival. And we were getting everything ready, and then there was a knock on the door. It was about 3 days before Prabhupada's arrival. There was a knock on the door. Guests would just come and knock, and we'd open the door. There was this, we call them in French clochard, like bum, dirty, disheveled, probably hadn't bathed in weeks. Hair was all matted by dirt and crust, and eyes intoxicated. Food. He wasn't very old. He was maybe a young man, 18 or 19. And I said, I'll give a little prasad, I won't come in. No. You have to bathe or something, you're too dirty. Food. Food. And then they went away. And then I went out for a japa walk later in the afternoon, and I was walking along the Avenue Foch. And that's a big, our center, Quatre Villers-sur, Fort Villers-sur, was in a very nice area of Paris. So I went on Avenue Foch, ran right into the Champs-Élysées and the Arc de Triomphe, like that. Very nice, prestigious boulevard. I'm walking, and I hear this noise in the bushes, like that. And I looked in the bushes, there was this boy, and he'd made a little place for himself there. I'd heard later from devotees that he'd been there for a few days. He had like some newspapers down the ground. He was sleeping there, making some noises. And the next day I came by, and he kind of popped out of the bushes. Food! I said, come to the temple, we'll give you some prasad. Anyway, other devotees heard about him, and we nicknamed him Pigpen. Charles Schultz had that character, Pigpen, because actually he was like Pigpen, flies. And so I forgot about it, then Prabhupada came. And one morning, Prabhupada wanted to take a morning walk on Avenue Foch. So, we were coming down, and suddenly out of the bushes lunged this boy. Devotees had been giving him prasadam, and maybe how those days try to deliver the whole, we preach it, maybe they were preaching to him, telling him some things, and he lunged out of the bushes at Prabhupada to grab Prabhupada's feet. And I don't know who it was, they said, "Get that boy!" And somebody got dragged him and threw him back in the bushes or something. We kept walking, oh my God, that was Pigpen. Pigpen almost touched Prabhupada's feet. The walk continued. We went a long way. We came back, went around the lake, and we came back, and everybody was on the morning walk. Just the pujaris were on the altar, addressing the deities. Prabhupada was going to come back for Govindam prayers. So we came back, and I noticed, because, we'd closed the door, because I didn't want anyone to come into the temple, the door was open. Somebody had come in while we were away. He left it open, wide open. We came into reception with Prabhupada. We came into the temple room, and I was right next to Prabhupada. We walked into the temple room, and there was Pigpen. And he lunged and he grabs Prabhupada's feet. And somebody says, "Get that!" And Prabhupada says, "No." And Prabhupada let him hold his feet. And Prabhupada put his hand on his head. He said, "That's all right, my boy, that's all right. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna." Massaging Pigpen's head. It's all right, it's all right. And you could hear a pin drop. The devotees nobody was moving. They're just, whatever position they were in, they're just stunned and they're watching. It's all right, my boy. And then Prabhupada said, "All right, Hare Krishna." And then Pigpen kind of fell back. And then Govindam Hare Purusham Dhamma, like this. And then the temple was crowded, and Pigpen was sitting in the middle of the floor. Like, and then Prabhupada sat down, and nobody would dare move him out of the temple room because we'd seen how Prabhupada was so affectionate towards him. So Prabhupada sat down, he started giving class and everything, and then the class was over, and then everybody kind of went, and then somebody said, well, Pigpen should leave. And some of the devotees said, no, Prabhupada gave him some mercy, let's see. So Pigpen, you want to stay? Taking a lot of drugs. So some devotees want to throw him out, so I said, okay, take him upstairs and clean him up. They took him upstairs and gave him a shower, and and they put him in a dhoti, kurta, everything. I didn't recognize him when he came downstairs, but he still couldn't speak very good. So he just kind of stayed around, and he's kind of stayed around that day, and then he spent the night, and somebody, we can't have him around, he can't do anything, and then Pigpen started doing like cleaning things. So he kind of endeared himself to devotees, like he started cleaning. And whenever we go to him, we'd say, Pigpen, how you doing? Oh, Prabhupada saved me. Prabhupada saved me. Okay, Pigpen. Well, okay, yeah, Prabhupada saved me. So then he kept staying around and started chanting. Okay, and then a couple of weeks later, it was time for me to go on traveling Sankirtan in my van. Went out, packed the van, the doors were open, we're packing the van there. And then some more book came out, and then Pigpen was sitting in the passenger seat, the front passenger seat. I said, Pigpen, what are you doing here? He said, going to Sankirtan. I said, Pigpen, you're doing a good job cleaning the temple, Going to Sankirtan. I said, Pigpen, why? He said, Prabhupada saved me. And I went, oh, Pigpen. All right, we'll give you a chance. You come out and you can clean the van. So he said, all right. We had to get his things together, to go upstairs and get his little things together and put them in the van. He was just sitting there. So then we left. Pigpen in the front seat. I was driving, looking over, and oh God, look at this guy. And he somehow got in a book bag, and he put some books in it. So in those days we were doing the parking lots. So we got to the parking lot, and we're getting our book, and the first one out of the van was Pigpen in his dhoti. Thinking, oh my God, what's this guy doing? He's going to get us arrested here, And he runs out, and I said, somebody go get him. What are we going to say? What are we going to do, I said, okay, he'll be back in a minute. He'll get scared out there. So, we'd had a big breakfast, we were like packing our bags and, talking to each other, and then looking, it looks like Pigpen's doing a book over there. Entrance to the shopping market, Hey, Pigpen, look at the book. And his bag was packed. So, we were late. I don't remember what it was. We were kind of tired or something from the night before. Just as we're getting ready to leave the van, about an hour later, Pigpen comes back, no books in his bag. I said, what happened? He probably dumped them. And no, we saw him distributing the book. I said, Pigpen, how'd you do that? What did you tell the people? I tell people that Prabhupada saved me. That was his mantra. But he was transformed from whatever he was before. There's that verse Sanatana Goswami says, it's like bell metal can be changed into gold by a chemical process. So someone who has the training and diksha from a pure Vaishnava devotee to the Lord, he can become Brahmana. He can be more than Brahmana, he can be Vaishnava. The transformation was so quick in the heart of Pigpen, it just created so much faith in all of us in the process of Krishna consciousness and Prabhupada's mercy. Prabhupada transformed that boy, just rubbing his head. It's all right, boy. It's all right, my boy. Hare Krishna, all right. What Prabhupada gave that boy during those 20 seconds, who can understand? He reached it, Prabhupada, grabbed his feet. And he was holding on to Prabhupada's feet in the temple room. like this. So then Pig Pen became a big book distributor. Speech cleared up, and he started talking nicely, started giving classes, and eventually he took initiation. And his name was Rasada Das. And for many, many years he was with us in France. And then, after some years, the French yatra changed, and I left, and he left, and I haven't seen him since that time. But I did receive some news that years later he was distributing books in America, in New York. This was a good, 20 years ago or something. But all glories to Srila Prabhupada's mercy to transform the Jagai and Madhais of the modern day, the modern era. Hare Krishna. One time Prabhupada came to New Mayapur, and we also arrived late because we were doing traveling Sankirtan. Up to the last minute we were always doing our Sankirtan. So we arrived a little late, and Prabhupada was giving darshan on the lawn. And at the end, Prabhupada asked for questions. So I thought, well, if I ask a question, my spiritual master will see me. He'll know that I'm his disciple, that I'm here. Because there were always so many devotees around, and we didn't get that much intimate association. So I raised my hand. I said, yes, Srila Prabhupada, I have a question. In your lecture, you were saying that the pure devotee of Krishna, he sees Krishna everywhere. Because of his love, he sees the Supreme Personality of Godhead everywhere. But in the Shikshastakam prayers, Lord Chaitanya is in the mood that he's feeling separation from Krishna. And thus he's feeling a moment to be like 12 years or more in separation. So how do we understand this? That on one hand the devotee is seeing the Lord everywhere, but he's also feeling separation. Prabhupada closed his eyes. I was just sitting very close to Prabhupada. He closed his eyes. It's a deep subject, Vipralamba Bhav. Feeling loving sentiments for the Lord in separation. And then he opened his eyes, he leaned over and he said, this is a very difficult question, he said, for advanced devotees. He said, someday when you're advanced, you will understand the answer to this question. That's all he said. But I felt like, in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, there's the story of one devotee who Mahaprabhu was not pleased with him, Mukunda Datta, who he had been going to hear from some impersonalists, attending their meetings. And when Mahaprabhu heard this, he ostracized him. I will not see this devotee. But on the plea of the Vaishnavas, all right, I'll see him after 1 million births. So he started dancing and Mahaprabhu's agreed to see me. After 1 million births. So when Prabhupada said that, one day when you're advanced, you will I thought, okay, by Prabhupada's mercy, one day I'll achieve some level of Krishna consciousness where I'll get the answer to that question. Devotee is a perfect gentleman, and I saw that Prabhupada, he was willing to preach to anyone and everyone. He always had time for anyone who came. He was the perfect listener, and he was always able to give the expert advice according to where that person was at in Krishna consciousness. And he was so expert that he could touch the heart of anyone who came, even if a person was antagonistic. I saw us in some, like one darshan Prabhupada was giving in Paris, and he said, are there any questions? And one lady, she raised her hand, she said, Swamiji, what was I in my last life? And Prabhupada ignored the question. And then he took another question. Then she stood up, Swamiji, I want you to answer my question. What was I in my last life? And then Prabhupada ignored again. And then third time she asked, and Prabhupada said, this is not a relevant question. Pariprashana sevaya. Questions of the spiritual master should be relevant. How to advance in Krishna consciousness. How to render service to Krishna. He said, it's not so important what you were in your last life, but what you'll be in your next life. And that got her. She said, oh. So what I can be in my next life? And Prabhupada said, you can be devotee of Krishna if you chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare. So like that, the times that I had in Prabhupada's association, I would see whether it was an admiral or it was a boy who was, a hippie boy, or whether it was a scholar, or whether it was just a mother of a devotee. Prabhupada was so expert that he could interest them somehow in Krishna consciousness. They would go away with a favorable impression of Krishna consciousness. So that, for me, that's like a perfect gentleman. He knew how to deal with people. Although Prabhupada could become angry. At a big Pandal program in Bombay, I wasn't there personally, but Giriraj Maharaj told me Prabhupada became very angry when one boy said that he was God. Krishna was not God, he was God. In front of 50,000 people, Prabhupada exploded. You are not God, you are dog. He became angry, defending his beloved Krishna. And many people walked out of that Pandal program because they were thinking, what kind of sadhu is this? But this is sadhu. If one really loves Krishna and Krishna is blasphemed, then the devotee will stand up to defend his beloved. So Prabhupada knew how to react in every situation to give Krishna conscious instruction to that person.
Vande Guru Sri Charanarvindam, Vande Guru Sri Charanarvindam.
Je anilo premadana Karuna prachu. Anilo premadana karuna prachu.